Live from New York, this is Spirit Matters. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Dao Grunga, and I'm here with the full crew, Achyuta Gopi, Kishore Chandra, our full live Zoom studio audience, and all of you listening out there, wherever you are at, whether it's your first time or your returning time. Glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. Welcome. How are we doing this morning, Achyuta and Kishore?
I am being tested by the modes, but I'm good.
Tested by the modes. That requires further inquiry. We'll get back to that in a second. You sure? I want to hear all about your tests and trials.
I feel like every
They
day that
make me feel better.
I feel like
my
every
life.
day that Achyuta is like, I'm sheltered. I'm just like, I'm being tested by the modes. I want to be as sheltered as Achyuta. So I'm also being tested by the modes, but I'm also sheltered at the same time.
I'm intrigued with what's going on in your guys' lives. The tests. I want to know the tests.
How are you, Diane?
How am I?
You trickily evade this question.
I always evade the question. I ask the question, and then I move on. I am doing well. Still here. I'm grateful. I'm learning some new skills. I'm getting into video development and editing and all of that stuff. I think I need a new computer to boost up my RAM space. But it's we're closing into the end of the year, so it's that time for me to think about just what I want to do before year end and how I want to kind of reorganize some things for next year. So it's just a time for reflection for me, and overall doing all right. Thanks for asking. Okay, now back to you guys.
Well, funny enough about that, I was like, that is all your work stuff.
It is all my work stuff.
Aside from your work things.
Oh, my inside of my work stuff.
Yeah, you have to have another side. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself out.
I'm not supposed to think about that.
Tested by the modes. Got it.
Why are we talking about this? I'm hurt and lonely.
Daya's birthday is also coming up.
Okay. Can we talk about it?
I'm getting older.
Isn't it on Sunday?
It is. It's on Sunday. This Sunday. How old? Let's do a game. How old do you think? You guys know. We've talked about this already on the show.
Yep, the podcast actually knows.
The podcast knows. Passion wants to know how old I'm going to be. Happy birthday. Sydney said 39. Pasha said 38. Yes. Pasha asked, how old are you, Dad? And then she said, you're spelled you-are 38.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why he's called Dad. Not because he's older, but it is because of things like this. You are spelled you are.
Oh, Govinda. All righty. Well, where we yesterday was just Achyuta and I, because the eclipsed Kishore.
The modes.
And we got real personal with Achyuta. She was telling some vulnerable stories. We were asking about I asked a question of, like, we were talking about calamities, and I referenced that verse from the Bhagavatam and the prayers of Queen Kunti, and about how we navigate things. Sometimes Achyuta said something really powerful, that if the calamity is never the end, and so if we're going through something, I quoted that phrase, like, if it's all going to work out in the end. If it's not working out, it's not the end yet. So I asked her a question about what is it experience in her life that felt like the world was caving in, life was falling apart, but looking back on it now, how you navigated through it and felt like you got to a better place. And her and Pasha at the same time, she said, and Pasha wrote, like, that's just the experience of being a Black woman in America. And then I asked her to, was that, or any country? Anywhere. Pasha specifically wrote in the chat, I think she said America. in the chat, her comment, but since we're in America, but anywhere. And I asked Achuta to either to speak to that point more in terms of, we have many Black women listening to our podcast, and we have many people who aren't, who either can relate to your story or be educated by you sharing and experience more of what that means. And you told a story of when you were a little girl and a traumatic event that happened with a parent friend who said they couldn't play you anymore because their mom told you that your skin color was going to rub off and that would be ugly and that wouldn't be good. And you still remember the name of the person because it was that seared into memory. Anybody's would. And then also even in a grown-up adult spiritual life, and experiences you've had of people making comments, etc., that were unsavory. And the question was, why are you still here? Like, because what happened was, I mean, not just the childhood incident, but also the incident of adult, of like, quote unquote spirit. You said spiritually minded people, and then we realized, like, what does it even mean to be spiritually minded if that's the kind of comments people are making? And so how do you navigate holding on to your spiritual beliefs, your spiritual strength, even when quote unquote spiritual people around you seem to act in such a way that would otherwise make you want to just like, I don't need to be here. How do we keep the faith when the spiritual people around us are acting contradictorily?
I think, first of all, step one, if you are only listening to this podcast, you need to go to YouTube to actually see the podcast, because Kishor's face right now is giving my whole life right now. Okay, it is giving the embodiment of my whole mind. His face is doing all the things, and I love it. I love you for it. But it taught me very, very, very early on that devotees are just people who happen to know about Krishna. They are not all pure souls. They are in a rehabilitation center just like me. Everybody is going through this rehabilitation. Some people are, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, famous black sannyasi, used to say, we're all in a hospital. Some people are sicker than others. Some people are getting better and some people are not. But everybody's in the hospital. And so it's taught me that people are people, but it's also taught me that I don't want to just wait for somebody's problem to become personal before I relate to it. I don't want to just sit around and wait for it to become my personal problem before I start going, hey, there's a problem with this, or there's a problem with us treating those people over there like that. There's a problem with seeing this hardened distinction between so many of us. And so it makes me look at it differently when someone is telling me what they struggle with. And I now tend to think twice before I'm like, oh, it's not a big deal. Why are you struggling with that? And I start to remind myself that me saying, oh, that's not a big deal, is my own little bit of privilege. It's a privilege for me to not have to struggle with whatever they're struggling with. And so sometimes I try and check that little bit of privilege, whether it's someone who's neurodivergent and they're trying to explain to me their struggles and what they're encountering, whether in Krishna consciousness, outside, etc., rather than just brush it off like, oh, well, that's not even a big deal. Try to understand that there are certain things that they've had to fight with their entire life, and that maybe I just got a little bit lucky in that regard. That's one less thing that I have to fight with. So it has lent a compassionate, hopefully, a more compassionate heart that I want to develop in fighting for the people that I care about, and fighting for those who are just trying desperately to know Krishna. And then to know that you don't have to put your everything into someone else, all of your relevance, your validity doesn't have to come from someone else. I was talking to a friend recently, and they were saying they were going through such a difficult time. And they said, I feel so irrelevant. I feel completely unseen in this spiritual community that I've given my life to. And I said to them, I said, you have to stop looking for a blueprint from someone who doesn't look like you, doesn't have the same, they don't have the body that you have, they don't have the struggles that you have. They know nothing about your variety and your brand of Krishna consciousness. They're not going to have your blueprint. And that's okay. Even if they seem to be management, it's okay. We've got to try and find the people who have a similar experience. They do exist. They're out there. And I've had loads of people say to me, they're like, oh, I didn't think there were any Black devotees. And I was like, yeah, well, 37 years. So there's a lot of us, actually. We're there. We are there. And it's a really interesting question to think about. If you didn't think there were any, let's talk about why. Let's question why. Are we preaching to each other? Are we looking at Bhagavad Gita and really going in with, okay, you are not this body. Okay, they aren't, but you definitely are. And I've even checked myself on how much I'm thinking that, especially when I see homeless people on the train. Am I thinking, well, one of those people could be like Jada Bharat. Jada Bharat from Srimad Bhagavatam was, at one point, many lifetimes in, he was a king. Several lifetimes later, he decided to pretty much look homeless, act homeless, and completely, he just didn't want to associate with society because he felt like the more he associated with society, the more he forgot Krishna. So he decided to act aloof completely. Am I looking at these people thinking they have the potential to be Krishna conscious? Or am I thinking, look, I just want to get away as quickly as possible because some people are totally their bodies. I'm not saying throw your safety out the window. What I am saying is Bhagavad Gita is all about perspective. And I want to, based on my experiences, change my perspective. Because people happen. Being tested by the modes happens. But Krishna's love also happens and is extremely real. And that is why I'm still here. Because there's nothing like Krishna's reciprocation. I promise you that.
And Krishna's reciprocation can often come through in a variety of ways, including other people.
Yeah.
Biggest thing I was taking away was finding other. One of many big things taking away was finding other people that share our experiences because they're out there. And if we are just going through it alone, then it's just us and our mind, and that's going to take us in a certain direction. But if we find other people, mature people, thoughtful people, actually spiritually minded people who have shared our experience, then actually we create a sense of Sangha that's very meaningful. Kishore, your facial expression has been referenced in this podcast, and so I just wanted to look at what was going on in your mind behind all this, because we haven't heard from you yet.
I don't know how we got into this conversation yesterday because I wasn't here, but it's a conversation that I always like and appreciate because you all know me. I like to get real about things.
It began with a rant by me, which is where most things start. And then
And
Achyuta brought it to somewhere meaningful and philosophical.
it's interesting because this point that Achyuta is making about people, devotees just being people, I always like to think of it as like, yeah, devotees are people who know about Krishna and they're trying to know more about Krishna, you know, hopefully. And it's almost like and it's not like we have a sensor of some sort that we could like go up to people. You know, in Star Trek when they used to like the tricorder, I think it was like, and it would like read the scans. It's not like you can go up to that to people and be like, okay, they're like 60% devotee today and 40% in the modes. So I'm gonna, it's safe territory.
Scanning.
It's not like that, but in a way it kind of is, except that we don't have the tool, you know. Some people do have the tool, but I don't have the tool. In many ways it's like that. It's some people will be whatever. It's not a, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not a competition, you know, it's a journey, and we're all at different stages, and depending on how much I am absorbed in Krishna, let's put it that way, in place of how much of a devotee I am, how much I'm absorbed in Krishna will give way to how much less I'm absorbed in material consciousness, and vice versa. The less I'm absorbed in Krishna, the more I'm absorbed in material consciousness. And so the more that I'm absorbed in material consciousness, then the more I get caught up with all of these things. And sometimes, you know, you have to stop yourself and ask. It's like, wait a minute, I thought they were devotees, or I thought we're spiritualists, or I thought we're this like happy, you know, community and stuff like that. And it's like, we have to remember that people are on their devotional journey of becoming absorbed in Krishna. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like 180% absorbed. You know, more realistically, it's like probably like 10 or 15, you know, I'm speaking for myself. And then that presents a problem, because I think people get really upset when there is some sort of altercation, myself included. Not altercation, but like, you know, some sort of something, whether it's racism, whether it's homophobia, whether it's politics. Oh my God, that's a can of worms. Like whether it's all these things in the material world that can be so divisive. If we are on that material platform, then it's like, yeah, it's gonna affect me. And, you know, it's like, I guess it's not a bad thing. You know, I always talk about this with Jai Jagannath, my dear friend, and we always like joke about this, and because people ask, you know, people always ask this question. It's like, if you could have chosen, would you have been a straight person? It's like, no, you know, no, I'm actually 100. We get asked that
I've
question
never heard of that question. And of course, because I'm not
all the
gay,
time.
and so I'm so out
You're
of
a
the
straight
loop.
person.
I'm a
No,
straight
but
person,
like here's the
and I
thing.
don't. I'm like
think
that dumb straight white guy. Like, really, people ask that, and you're like, yes, it happens all the time.
I
I'm like,
think
All the
where it's
time.
coming from is people like really like, but wouldn't you just choose to make your life easier?
Yeah.
And it's like, excuse me? How are you so sure? Like the fact that the world is set up that way, that just choosing to abandon a whole section of yourself. It's just like, what wouldn't you just choose to make it easier on yourself? I'm like, you fix the world. That's an issue. Sorry.
No, it's
Sorry.
okay. It's okay. Yeah, that question gets asked a lot, all the time. And it's so funny because like I think there was a time in my life, maybe when I was like a kid, where I was just like, yes, I'll change everything. Just let me be normal. And now as an adult, I'm like, no, like this was such an interesting, unique journey that has rewarded me with a lot of a different perspective than a lot of people. And it continues to do so, you know, and there is reciprocation even in that journey of what maybe from a different vantage point can be very much painted as a journey of suffering, a journey of tribulation, a journey of this, a journey of that, which, you know, there was a lot of that stuff there. But when we connect Krishna to the dots, it's like, oh, actually, this was somehow deepening my relationship with you. You know, this was somehow bringing me closer to you. This is like the specific flavor and ras and taste that like you wanted me to have with you, Krishna, you know? And that's going to be extremely different and I'll end on this point, that's going to be extremely different than someone else's relationship or taste with Krishna. And I think that that's where things get a little like confusing for people. When my feeling is that when people want me to like really fit in a box, or people are just like kind of just trying to like plumage, is that a word? Plummet? I don't know.
Plummet.
When people, I don't know what I'm trying to say. When people are trying to bombard me with their like rules and regulations, or like this is how it's supposed to be. Barrage.
Thinking of
It's like
barrage.
barrage and pummel.
Yeah, I combine them. Plumage. That's a good word. Yeah, when they're trying to barrage me with that, I always feel like, I don't know, I always feel like it's a waste of my time in a sense to like defend myself. You know, I'm always just like, okay, whatever, you know, you're over there and you're on your journey, and I'm over here and I'm on my journey. And the reason I think that is just because the deeper that I feel like you go into the mystery of your relationship with Krishna, it's like we understand that everyone's relationship is going to be different. And so it's like, if I have someone over there, you know, yelling at me, it's like, why doesn't your relationship with Krishna look this way? Or like, why isn't it like this? Or why isn't it like how I'm doing it? You know, then I almost, it's kind of like a litmus test for me. I almost immediately understand like, oh, we're not going to be friends. You know, I'll respect you as a devotee, Hare Krishna, but we're probably not going to be friends. And the reason is just because I feel like that's such a fundamental understanding. It's like, we might be from different, you know, like if I'm really embodying this, I am not the body. If I'm really understanding this philosophy of like, you know, whether you're, you know, a high class person or a low class person, whether you're born into poverty or whether you're born into riches, whether you have this skin color, whether you have that skin color, whatever conditioning it is that we might have, like, do I actually believe that anyone can be Krishna conscious, you know? And if I actually believe that, like Achyuta was saying about the homeless people, then it widens my perspective, and it behooves me to not criticize people or judge people on the bodily platform. So yeah, that's what I think about all that.
Did you know? Here's where I get in trouble. I always get in trouble. But it's fine. I'm going to just be a spiritual troublemaker now. Did you know that there are whole preaching centers, mentoring groups, community groups, etc., with, you know, ISKCON stamps on them, that will preach that you cannot be Krishna conscious if you are anything other than straight.
I do know that.
I've gotten tons of messages, letters, emails, and saying, well, yeah, that's wrong, usually gets the reaction of, well, that's a really brave thing to say. Because it's amazing how much people are willing to try and crush what presents a resistance to their current belief. But it's not true. Contrary to popular belief, from my understanding, Krishna is so not concerned with who you are sleeping with. I also think we should not be concerned with who anybody's sleeping with, because that's just creepy, guys. Like, you know, just think about how creepy that would be if we like if we started walking up to, like, Doyal, just imagine going through your day every day and people are like, wait, so you and your wife are not gonna have kids? Wait, so then what do you do? Because wait, are you guys are sleeping in the same room? Because that's totally illicit sex, you know that, right? Like, you are breaking all of the regs every time. Wait, you hug your wife because you know, like, being a brahmachari is the only way to get back to Krishna. Every day, every conversation.
I'm not even going to mention that the dog sleeps between us in the bed.
Right. See, now that's another thing. Like, you're showing compassion to other living entities. Like, that's a no-no. I have known people that have gotten kicked off of their service because they've had pets. And so it's all amazing how much
You guys don't
little
want me to
bits
be
of
in.
privilege we have. Even when we have things that we're fighting through, we all have that little bit. Because of course that's what keeps us thinking. I can fix this material world. Look, I'm not dealing with this, but that person's dealing with this, but I have it a little bit better than at least that person. Like, I can fix this place. And so it's like, why am I still here? Why the trials and tribulations? And I was just talking to friends about this last night. And I was saying, if everything was nice, if we actually were able to wring out the happiness and the pleasure that we were thinking we were going to wring out, we wouldn't want to leave. But we've been ignoring Krishna for so long. And so Krishna does the thankless task of saying, but okay, look, enough. You've said enough. You said you want to surrender to me. So now no more pretending. Come home where there isn't this. Come home where everybody's a different color of the rainbow. I just read about a gopi whose complexion was that of black gold. It doesn't even exist here. We have no idea what that looks like. And so I feel like Krishna's constantly like, if I give you everything, you won't come home. And I just want my friends to come home. So when Queen Kunti says that she's thankful and welcomes the calamities again and again, like we were saying yesterday, if that's the admission price to Krishna's mercy, to Krishna's direct attention, to getting Krishna's ears to perk up and him to say, okay, this is my person. We're going home now. Okay. Because, I used to think, well, I'm just not going to read that verse. But just like we said, like having kids won't solve your problems, not having kids won't solve your problems, right? Saying the prayer is not going to make the calamities come. Not saying the prayer is also not going to make the calamities. It's not like I'm just not going to say that prayer and therefore the calamities won't come. They're coming anyway. She's just observing the reality of the situation. They're coming anyway. So now she welcomes them because that means every single calamity brings Krishna closer. Every single calamity gets the attention of my Krishna.
Hare Krishna. You guys don't want me to be on this podcast anymore because I sleep with my dog. Just tell me.
No, it's not the dog, it's the wife that's the problem. You are completely surrounded by the modes because you have an attachment for another living entity, spirit soul, who could probably remind you of Krishna, but we're going to ignore all of that.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Kimberly, how are you going to wrap this one up, huh? What are your takeaways? What you got for us, Kimberly? The summarizer.
All right. So today we're taking away that anyone can be Krishna conscious.
True.
Yup. It's not a competition. It's a journey and we're all at different stages. To find people who share our experiences and to connect Krishna with the dots. His love is real and there's nothing like his reciprocation.
Beautiful. Kishore, Chuta, any closing words?
I really like this point that Achyuta made that Kimberly so nicely summarized of like finding your people. I think it's like extremely important to find people who understand where you're coming from and your point of view. If anything, this might sound dramatic, but I think it's true. I think it's like necessary for your spiritual survival to find people that understand your unique vantage point. And how and that relationship that will inevitably unfold with Krishna because of that unique vantage point. There are so many people that have reached out to me around sexuality issues, and it's so sad to see people fall away from Krishna consciousness because they're not surrounded by people who love and support them and who are telling them, things that aren't anything spiritual. It's not in the Bhagavatam, it's not in the Gita, it's not anywhere. It's just cultural things where it's like, no. And they get so discouraged that they leave. I had someone recently reach out that left, and now they're like, oh, but I want to know what are you doing? How are you doing this, and etc. And so I think it's super important, if anything, necessary, to find people who understand you in your spiritual life.
I agree. I was thinking this before the podcast. Kishore said it in the podcast, and so I know it must be Paramatma speaking from the hearts of all. Anyone can be Krishna conscious. Do not let anybody tell you you can't be, because anyone and everyone can be Krishna conscious. It's already inherent. You already are Krishna conscious. It is simply about remembering. So yes, find your tribes. They are there. There are tribes of neurodivergent devotees. There are tribes of non-hearing devotees. There are tribes of LGBTQIA plus devotees. There are so many tribes. Please don't stop looking until you find them. And then if you really can't find one, start it. Because you'd be surprised how many people were looking just like you and how many people need it desperately. It wasn't at all dramatic. I agree. Our spiritual survival depends on it.
Thank you guys for being you. And thank you for all of the chat's blowing up over here. There's all kinds of things. There's something that Pasha told me not to read out loud. Okay, I'll note that one. There's all kinds of beautiful things going on over here in the chat. Love you guys so much. Thank you. A lot of you guys are sharing that you're glad you found us. We're glad that we found you and that Krishna brought us together. There's a beautiful, beautiful family that has grown here in our Spirit Matters family. Well, grateful for all of you. If you want to let us know where you're at, tell us your story, ask us questions, share reflection, you can always write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. And if you go to our webpage, just Bhakti Center, I think /Spirit Matters or whatever, go to the Bhakti Center, search Spirit Matters. You can get our Zoom link if you want to join us live on Zoom. And we love you and we're grateful for you. And we hope to see you again sometime soon. Please take care, everybody. And we'll see you again soon. Well, today's Friday, which means that we're going to not be here till Monday.
But you didn't promise them tomorrow. You said soon.
We'll see you soon, guys. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.